Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. We're getting started in just a minute, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's gonna be a great session. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So I grew up in a family where my dad was very fair. I mean, he was very, very fair. My dad could fix anything. He could fix cars. He could fix our house. He really could fix anything. I mean, we had one situation, Tom, where he was renovating our basement, right? And he learned that to bring it up to code, you had to have an official electrician license to come out and inspect it and things like that.
Right. So we went and hired an electrician.
Right. The normal person goes out and hires an electrician. My dad studied for the electrician exam, passed the exam, and did his own electric work, right? My dad really can fix anything.
And those genes passed right down to you, right,
He's
Justin?
passed every one of his genes. In fact, he spent hours teaching me. I mean, we were at the car, we were, in the basement fixing things, carpentry, electric, plumbing. He taught me everything he knew, but none of it stuck. I mean, not a little bit of it stuck, which is unfortunate. So we bought a 1920s Craftsman in Maryland. It's an old house that needs tons of work. I found out the hard way that when you talk to contractors and they ask you a bunch of questions, right? Do you want this or do you want that? I would always ask them the same question. I would say, hey, what would you do if you were in my situation?
Right.
And they would always answer the same way. They say, listen, it's not my decision, it's your decision. So I spent a lot of time on the digital shelf, right? I spent a lot of time badly researching. I bought this fan for my daughter's room. Now my kids are all like 6 foot tall girls. And I bought this fan online. The fan hung down 4 feet. My girls were hitting their heads on it. I did a lot of bad purchases. And apparently so did a lot of people. I mean, over the last year in DIY, home improvement, we've seen sales increase online at least 57% at the bottom half, in some cases 100 to 150%. Lighting showrooms are closed. Kitchen and bathroom showrooms are closed. An interesting thing happened where that I learned about shopping. So I would do my research, find the product I wanted. The painful part of putting in your shipping information and putting in your payment information, I would go to Amazon. If they allowed me to one-click it, it didn't matter what the price was, I'd buy it off of Amazon just for the convenience.
Convenience.
So my name is Justin King. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined by Tom Williams, who's the vice president at C2, which is a Xerox business company, right?
It is now a Xerox Business Solutions company, correct?
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us.
All right, excellent. So thanks, Justin. I'm really excited to be here on the screen with you, talking to all these folks about the DIY market industry. We're going to swap some, rather embarrassing stories about our DIY attempts and hopefully teach each other a few things, and hopefully everyone who tuned in today as well. So again, my name is Tom. I run the e-business practice at C2, a Xerox Business Solutions company. Before that, I was running the digital e-business for Razorfish Platforms, and before that with a consulting firm called Crown Partners out of Ohio. So been in the space a long time, and really, really excited to talk about this. And again, I've got my fair share of DIY projects. Owned a 100-year-old condo in Chicago. Did a lot of project work there, and just recently, we built a house actually now up in Vermont. And I thought that the builder would do everything, but then I found out they only do the major stuff. They get you to a certain point, and then they sort of hand you the proverbial keys, and you work on the finishings and things like this. So whether it's an old place like your place in Maryland or a new place, the DIY stuff is always sort of there. So very relevant, very timely for everybody.
So two guys that don't know how to DIY
talking
to you about it. No, but what we are good at is digital shelf, right? E-commerce. My name is Justin King. I'm Vice President of Industry Marketing at Salsify. Salsify, our mission is to help brands win on the digital shelf. I think that's a crazy cool, amazing mission statement to be able to sell. We help brands win on the digital shelf. So today, if you have questions in the Q&A box, there's a Q&A panel box. Please type your questions in there. We'll be monitoring them along the way. And yes, I know the next question that's going to be asked is this recorded? Yes, it's being recorded, and we'll make sure everybody has a copy of that the recording. So I guess the main point of this is that the digital shelf, in my case, it became the primary shelf, right? And in fact, 82% of people consult their phones when doing in-store purchases for non-consumables, right? So home improvement would fall into that category. But we've used the word digital shelf quite a few times. I think it's important to define what the digital shelf is. So the digital shelf is anywhere where your product content, you as brands, your product content is out there, and consumers are making decisions based on that content, right? So what are some examples of that? So Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, all their .coms, right? HomeDepot.com, Lowe's.com, Menards.com are great examples of the digital shelf. But the cool thing about home improvement is it extends beyond. I mean, it's about marketplaces. You have Amazon, Build.com, you have pure play retailers like FaucetDirect.com. You have distributors. I mean, I think one thing we're passionate about is talking about the B2B side. You have distributors like Grainger, MSC, Fastenal. And then there's this kind of crazy niche area of the internet, what's happening on the digital shelf for like mobile social platforms. So for example, TikTok has a crazy amount of DIY content on TikTok of all places, as well as Instagram. So all these places are the digital shelf. So as a home improvement brand, we've got to figure out how to win on that digital shelf with so many different platforms.
Absolutely. And, TikTok and Instagram, all the modern platforms, it's fun to kind of rewind the clock a little bit. So we were talking earlier, this thing used to be called the endless aisle. So back in the 90s, when e-commerce was starting to come out, C2 started doing commerce sites back in 96, which is way back there. One of our customers would come to us and say, hey, help us sell more in store. And the whole idea was to take the commerce experience in the store, enable the sales reps.
Commerce experience in the store versus.
Exactly. That's the endless aisle, right? So the lens that people were looking through was the brick and mortar lens. That's where the endless aisle term came from. You're in the aisle, standing in the store, and you want endless sort of inventory on those shelves. So fast forward to today, I think it's just amazing that now we're talking same concept, but through the digital lens. Now it's the digital shelf, which is the digital first concept versus looking at it from the brick and mortar. And I think that's pretty amazing that we sort of have crossed over. Everyone's kind of wondering when that would happen, when everyone would begin to think digital first and then everything else, alignment with that. And we're there. We've actually crossed that chasm, if you will.
So let's talk about some trends. I think what's most interesting, not just kind of spouting trends out there, but talking about trends through the lens of our customers. So we both had the opportunity, I've had the opportunity of interviewing dozens of DIY home improvement brands. And I think we're going to talk about some trends that they are telling us they're reacting to, right? Not just some random trends that customers are actually paying attention to and reacting. The first one, we're not going to overplay this today. COVID, of course, has affected consumer behavior, right? COVID has changed how people shop, buy, pick up things, get things delivered to their house. It's changed that consumer behavior. I mean, for me, the digital shelf was the primary shelf, and so many other people are looking at that. So I think the most important part of that, though, beyond the kind of consumer behavior, is that the push to the digital shelf, this change in consumer behavior, created this crazy amount of demand for product content, right? All of a sudden, the only decisions you are making were on the digital shelf, which means you're looking at product content on a screen, on a product detail page. And all of a sudden now we have to be able to, as brands, we have to be able to give this content to so many different people. Retailers like Home Depot, Lowe's, they broke, I think between the two of them, they're between 100 and 150% increase in online sales. And that trickled down to the brands too, of the demand to them for partnering with them for product content. It's definitely pulled back a little bit, but I think that behavior is with us for a long, long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're seeing it with the millennials, with the Gen Z, and their desire to really go direct to those brands, right? So think about D2C, or direct to consumer. So the brand can't simply just rely on the distribution network or just on the retailer for that touch point. The generation of consumers coming up, of which our houses are packed with teenagers, both of us, want to go directly to the brand. They want to hear directly from the brand things about what the brand is doing for sustainability and the environment, and all of these things factor into the purchase decision. Not just is it the lowest price, not just is it did it pop up first on the search, but really what's behind the whole thing. And again, the only way you're going to be able to communicate this is through the product content. So, kind of thinking back again, back when I lived in Central Ohio, there was a small hardware store, and this is, pre-internet stuff. There'd be a person standing up on this very elevated kind of area. And when you walked in the store, they'd greet you and they want to know, what do you need and how can we help you? And they were that content. They were filling that gap of the product content. But today, that seems kind of silly.
You get people to work at store.
Well, I know you can't get them to work at the store, let alone stand on a podium and greet people when they come in. But nor would a millennial or Gen Z want that. They probably turn around and be like, "Holy, someone's talking to me! I'm going to go out the door." But it's really the onus for all that product content. It falls back on the brand, getting that out, getting it consumable by the businesses, by the pros, by the DIYers sitting here in these chairs, and really creating that rich product content and product experience.
Yeah, I've become an expert in Gen Z. You've got teenagers. I've got 4 teenage daughters myself. They're all Gen Zers. I mean, just a couple years ago, we were talking about millennials. Now we're talking about Gen Z. What you said about sustainability is correct. My daughters will go onto a brand's website and read a sustainability policy, right? That's like reading a terms and conditions page. Like, who wants to do that? But they do that. This generation is different, and we've got to be able to react to it. Isn't there, with D2C, is there channel conflict that you've seen there?
Absolutely. So again, you have to be careful, right? The manufacturer needs to be careful about anything that would create that channel conflict with the retailers, conflict with the distributors. So an example I'll give, it is possible to even go as far as to sell the product direct. I'm going to talk about direct to consumer, actually selling direct to consumer. You can do it in a way that avoids the channel conflict. You have to be very careful. You got to use the right technology, the right people to help you put it in place. But essentially what you can do is you can create a shopping experience, right, where the people are coming to the brand, but those orders are fulfilled through your distribution network. So in the old model, or then I would say old model, the model that presently exists most of the time is someone comes to the brand, they're interested in these products and things, but you want to go buy it. They'll say, well, click on the distributor page, and off you go, and good luck, with the distributor. In this model, you can actually have folks put different products, even from different distributors, into the same cart and actually transact that business. So then instead of the distributor sending them a hot lead, you actually send them an order. Say, hey, we've sold this. Here's the money. Here's the order. Please fulfill this with the customer. And for the brand, you get to keep the users on your site longer. You get to gather all that web intelligence, where they're going. You get to control the user experience. You get to control the brand experience, the pricing. So it can be done, but you do need to be very sensitive to your retail chains, to your distribution chains, because again, we're going to talk about this later, but everybody's in this digital shelf together, right? It's not just the manufacturer. It's not just the distributor. You've got to break those silos down. Everyone's got to work together for the betterment of the consumer. When you do that, all the different people win along the way.
I think one of the things that I think is kind of the most exciting in the home improvement area is retailers. This is what our customers are telling us, that the retailers like Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards are starting to serve the pro market.
Right.
So in the past, professionals, B2B, electricians, plumbers, they would go to a local distributor and pick up. Now what we're seeing is Home Depot, Lowe's putting a significant effort into serving the needs of professionals. So they become a one-stop shop. So instead of just picking up something you forgot at a Home Depot and Lowe's, now they're serving all of the needs of professionals. And we're going to talk a lot about B2B in just a little bit, but I think it's a pretty fascinating.
It is fascinating. Yeah. And it's just interesting how the digital shelf has been somewhat disruptive, right? You've got, just like you said, you've got the pros moving off necessarily the distributors and going to the retailers. You've got consumers who previously only went to the retailers going to the manufacturers. So this proliferation of information is very interesting how it's impacted the traditional sort of research, decision-making, and buying experiences.
I think the last big change, and I think probably the most significant change, is is regarding the retailers here, right? The retailers are now reacting to consumers and the amount of information that they have, and the retailers are now changing themselves, and those changes that they make ripple down to the brands. Most of this comes into effect with the content that they want to get from the brands. So Amazon's portal to accept product content changed 346 times last year. Now,
is that once a day?
In my math,
once a day?
In my math, that's once a day. Yeah. Okay. Home Depot, 346 for Amazon. Home Depot changed 239 times. Lowe's changed 125 times. So brands, the trend that they're reacting to, brands are saying is we've got to react to all these changes in real time because we want our content on their digital shelf, right? So they're forced to react to this. And then sometimes that limits them in technology and time and resources, which I think is pretty interesting. At the end of the day, I think what our customers are telling us about all these trends is they want to win the algorithm on the digital shelf. They want to win the digital shelf. Right. That becomes the most important. So those are a couple of trends that our customers are telling us about. I think there's some trends that you and I have talked about that aren't necessarily kind of the top three trends, but there are other trends that our brands are starting to react to. Let's talk about some of those trends.
Yeah, so some of those trends I get excited about is the average order value, or AOV, right? And also conversion rates. So it used to be back when everyone was trying to figure out, especially in the B2B space, you remember this, everyone's like, oh, we do EDI. We got that covered. We don't need commerce. So it was sort of this realization that people, were shopping on Amazon and they wanted that same experience in the B2B space. And when they figured this out, one of the big selling points around actually moving to an e-commerce site was average order value and conversion rates. These were the two metrics. So it's a metrics that everybody watches, but in the DIY space, it's particularly interesting. So the average order value in DIY is $285 per cart. Wow. So that that is, exceeded only by the furniture industry, where people are putting, couch or bedding or a huge piece of furniture or something in a e-commerce cart.
I think grocery average order value is just like over $100. So $285, pretty significant.
Yeah, it's more than double the average. I also read that earlier, moving from 2020 to 2021, the average conversion rate on commerce sites increased from 1.77 to 1.79. So it moved up to 100.
So that's all e-commerce.
All
right?
e-commerce
Not
sites.
just
Yeah,
home improvement.
exactly.
1.7.
All digital shelves.
Okay.
The conversion rate in DIY space, in the home improvement space, 3.2%. So that's about 80% higher than your standard conversion rate. So, and again, I think it also goes down to the reason that people shop for the DIY market, right? We'll talk more about this, but it's not necessarily a browsing thing. You don't go browsing for a valve for your shower because you're just cruising through the internet. You have a specific need, something's broken, you want to expand something. There's a motivation behind it that exceeds just, I'd like a new shirt, right? So of course that's going to correlate to the higher conversion rates. And of course the parts can be more expensive, or if you got a project, you're putting lots of parts in the cart, which is going to give you that higher AOV. But additionally, just even searching, and again, COVID impacted the DIY space in a very good way. People took all their vacation money that they couldn't use, put it into home improvement projects. The search for home improvement keywords on Amazon up 900% last year. Online revenue growth increased 68% on average between HomeDepot.com and Lowe's.com. And then of all the digital shelves, so this is a fun metric. So of all the digital shelves out there, the home improvement market occupied 7.5% of all sales across all the digital shelves. Justin, what do you think that went to in 2021?
No idea.
10%.
Wow.
It's a 2.5% move, but across the entire spectrum of retail sales. So really, really significant. If you're in this space, like there is so much movement in a good direction in this space. But of course, that underpins just a more and more need for the product content and a content program and all of those things that allow you to be successful as this wave continues.
So 3.2% conversion rate. I guess what I'm most drawn to is that $285 average order value. Why is that significant to you?
So it's significant because it reflects, again, the reason that people are buying it, which ties to the conversion rate as well. So if you're shopping and you order a shirt and the product date is not good, you get the wrong size, you get the wrong color, whatever it might be, you're going to be upset. You're not going to get to wear it. You'll send it back. You might go looking, somewhere else. But it hasn't really disrupted your life in a critical way. If you are in the middle of a home improvement project and you've got parts coming, maybe contractors are coming to use those parts that you're buying, or you've got one weekend to get something done because the next few weekends are blitzed with holiday stuff and things like this, and you get the wrong part, now you're backed up. So that has, real life impacts. Then you take it up to the next level, right? The electricians, the plumbers that you've hired, right? Because we're not handy. So we bring these folks into our house and they help us with these projects. They're dependent on getting those things done in a certain sequence. So if the wrong parts are showing up, they're not just put out, they're out of money. Things are backed up. The supply chains today are so atrocious with just everything that's going on and the post-COVID fallout from this. Getting the wrong part doesn't mean you can just run down the street and get the right one later that day. That used to be the thing. I'll just run back down and get the right part. Not necessarily. Supply chains are so disrupted right now that mistakes like that, digital shelf mistakes, can be really devastating to people, both individually and in that pro market.
I think let's dig into the pro market for a bit. I think the pro market is fascinating. I mean, both of us have a passion for the B2B side of businesses. We love that, but let's dig into it a little bit. So the biggest difference between B2B and B2C, obviously the type of customer that's coming, right? So it's not just a consumer, it's a customer, a business customer. And the people that are coming to your website, they don't have to be there, or they don't want to be there.
Correct.
They have to.
They're not shoppers, right? They're
right.
buyers.
They're buyers, right? They have to. It's their job to be there, right? And so anytime you're serving someone's job versus someone just kind of shopping for shoes or shopping for a shirt. People don't do that in the B2B business. They have a problem they're trying to solve, and they're coming to your site to solve a problem. Mark Cuban, in his book, How to Win, says that people in their jobs, more than anywhere else, they find the path of least resistance. Really, that means that people are, they want to do their job as easy as possible. So in B2B, when we're talking about a customer experience or content that's needed on the digital shelf, what we're really talking about is meeting the utility of their job. It doesn't have to be a cool experience. It has to be an experience that meets the requirements of the job. Like, can I find a product, right, as fast as possible? We've talked off air a bunch, and we talk about this concept of, do you have the product? What's my price? And when can I get it? Do you have it? What's my price? When can I get it? That's what B2B customers are looking for, right?
Absolutely. So it reminds me of, we did a replatform of a website, commerce site for a large commercial kitchen distributor years ago. And I was really intrigued by this, that the shipping was marked up. Now think about that. So you have the shipping costs, right? Who likes to pay shipping costs, right? As consumers, we hate shipping costs. We want free shipping. We know they're building it into the price, but nobody says that. So it's free. It's free shipping. It can be a deal breaker. This person's going to charge me shipping, and that person's going to be free. I'm going with the free shipping. That's where I'm going to go. In this business, the shipping actually carried really good margins.
It was a profit center.
It's a profit center. Yeah.
Shipping
was a profit center. And what that tells you is that in this business that serves the commercial kitchens with spare parts, that the most important thing to them was, do you have that product? How fast can you get it to me? Price was actually over there, which is why the shipping could be marked up, right? Price was like on the side. Do you have it? Yes or no? Is it the right thing? And how fast can you get that to me? Because we got 3 ovens and one of them's down and customers are waiting. So you can imagine under that scenario, if your product content data is not accurate, you have a big problem. And it was interesting, actually, I just thought of this. One of the things that the client did to get ready for commerce was they sent these crash carts up and down their aisles. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of products. And I mean, they had the dimensions, they had the weights, they were all in the thing. They weighed every single part. They had laser calipers, they measured every single part to make sure that it was perfect. So that situation of, here's your part, we're so glad we can help you. And they're like, that's not it. This is wrong. It's the wrong size. It's the wrong weight. It's the wrong, whatever it is.
Right.
They wanted to avoid that at all costs. They went to huge lengths to be sure that product data was accurate. Now, of course, product data is much bigger than the DIMs and the specs, right? It goes way beyond just those things.
But the specs are safety issues, right? If you have the wrong specs or see the wrong specs or publish the wrong specs, you have safety issues, legal issues, let alone just not helping in a job.
So really unhappy customers if they're getting the wrong stuff.
In fact, I think we're watching different data go into the pro market than the consumer market, right? Because often they'll have spec sheets, right? Or MSDS sheets, safety data sheets that they're sending along with the pro market that they might not care about on the consumer side. So it's 2 different types of syndication happening on both sides. So the B2B part is probably an area that you and I can talk about for a long time. We're both very passionate about this area. But those are kind of the trends that we're seeing. I think the last trend that I think is really interesting is when, even just 2 years ago, the applications that interior designers had or that architects had, they were restricted for them, right? Now, those apps, the same apps that interior designers have and that architects have, those same apps are now available on iOS, right? Or in the App Store.
The enhanced or ultra enhanced content.
Things like interior designers can measure a room with lasers and then put things and color different walls and put couches in and show their customers what it'll look like. Those apps now, we can download them. Architectural apps are now available to just consumers. And I think this move shows, I think for me, more than anything, it shows the movement of the digital shelf. right? We don't know what the digital shelf is going to look like a year from now. We have no idea, right? Will there still be retailers and marketplaces and distributors? Absolutely. But what new things are we going to see? I think things like video, augmented reality, where you can show your product in someone's room. I did a lot of that work. I should have done it with the fan to see my daughters underneath it. I didn't.
And that's when it is in the consumer space, right?
That's right.
The phone, you can actually see there's a big B2B application with that as well. So again, C2 part of Xerox, as is a company called Care AR for augmented reality, which is geared at maintenance. Industrial. So they can take the iPad or tablet, right, whatever it is, and hold it up to equipment that's not functioning correctly. And it will be smart enough to ingest that and actually show them on the screen where the problems are on the equipment. Yeah.
So you have Internet of Things now, virtual reality, augmented reality. I mean, even simple things, Tom, like image search. Like now you can take a picture on Home Depot's app or Amazon's app. You can take a picture of a part and it'll search through its database to match that part. Right. Instead of having to figure out, is this a 3-inch or a 2.5 or 3 1/4? What is it? The image search will bring those specs to you, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, really incredible.
I think one of the things that this just highlights is the amount of data needed to do like 3D modeling is different than just showing an image, right? So the content demands on brands is going to be more significant even into the future. Right?
Absolutely. A lot of this is where things are going, right? So it's not like I expect all the brands to run out and start doing AR and virtual reality.
That's right.
But I do think the one thing that everybody should get fully on board with is instructional video. The do-it-yourself market is based on one thing in particular, that you can do it yourself, right? That people have the confidence not us, not necessarily. I'm making inroads, but that people have the confidence to do these projects. And, with projects getting more complex and equipment getting more complex, we were talking earlier, I told you I had, years ago, I had a problem with my washing machine, which honestly, let's be honest, washing machines go like this. It's what they do. They oscillate. That's it. You know what was wrong with this thing? The motherboard blew up. The computer that controls this blew up. So that's beyond my DIY skills. Technician had to come in, replace the whole motherboard. But I did actually do a project to replace some shower valves. And it was the videos put out by the manufacturer that gave me the confidence that I needed. I needed some confidence to actually take on that project and do that. So so I think, as far as like, what can I do now? I would say more video. Instructional video is really, really important to enable the do-it-yourselfers to feel confident doing it themselves. That's
so lots of cool kind of trends. Let's talk a little bit now about like, what do brands do? How do they respond? Right. I think core through what we've talked about is that the product detail page is or has become or at least is moving to a place where it is the most important, right? The product detail page is key. And, even beyond that, not just product information, but information about the brand. We talk about Gen Z, sustainability practices, brand practices. We're watching more and more brand content go on to the product detail pages, the PDPs, not just about specs and attributes and images anymore. It's telling a broader story about that brand, sometimes in enhanced content and sometimes even above the fold.
Right.
In home improvement, what this probably means is specifications, weights, dimensions, how tall a fan is from the ceiling.
So it doesn't take your head off.
It doesn't take your daughter's head off. So it often comes down to product content. But with product content, our first suggestion here is create a content program. A program is different than a product, right? There's no start date. There's no end date, right? In content, in product content, there is no such thing as good product content. There's only content that's improving every day, every month, every quarter, every year, which means you need to have a product content program to support that. And at the core of that, you should probably have a product content owner. So our recommendation is create a content program. Create a content program that's charged with improving content and have an owner at the center of that that's kind of directing traffic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in addition to that, we're starting to see a lot of collaboration. As consumers have more demands, as consumers use the digital shelf more to make these decisions, then there's more collaboration needed between the retailers, the brands, the distributors, the brands, the marketplaces, the brands, the apps, the social apps. More collaboration is needed between these channel partners to provide the consumers with the content they need to make decisions. And then the reason they're collaborating is quicker time to market. They're doing that to automate this content approval process of analytics for both of them to see, like, how is this content doing? Is it performing well, not performing well? And at the end of the day, it's about serving the consumer, but now also serving that professional, that B2B customer.
Absolutely. And in addition to, up and down the supply chain and coordination there, you need to break down the silos inside of organizations, right? So as we talked about before, the endless aisle idea was the brick and mortar view of digital. It's amazing how many of our companies are still holding structures that sort of support that rather than the digital shelf. So, being able to break down those silos, cut across the silos, like even what you were talking about, having someone own the product program, right, as a program, that's going to cut across marketing, supply chain, inventory. That's just going to cut across all that. So you don't necessarily have to restructure your entire organization, but do things and enable people to be able to cut through the silos, do some matrix reporting. You can do all kinds of stuff within your organization. But it is important that there needs to be an organizational shift to enable the digital shelf and that kind of product content thinking first across all the different areas that touch that from where you create it all the way to the customer.
Very true. At the end of the day, it's about winning the algorithm, right?
Winning the algorithm.
It's about search as well and ranking well in search pages for the retailers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about product content. It's about serving that customer experience. So recap that is our suggestions are build a content program, right? Have an owner, collaborate with your channel partners, distributors, retailers. Distributors need your help right now, guys. I mean, they need your help. They need collaboration to make this work. The distributors don't have the technology like Home Depot and Lowe's does to ingest this content. They need help from the brands. They need to do this together. It needs to be an industry-wide thing. And lastly, I mean, it's about winning the algorithm, right? And really preparing your product content to win on those different digital shelves.
Right. And regardless of how good the search engine is, right? Whether we're talking Google or we're talking Amazon search or search on your own website, your own commerce site, that search engine is only as good as that product data.
That's right.
So if you fill it up with a bunch of bad product data, doesn't matter how good the search engine is, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. So again, it continues to underpin the need for good product content, good product data, a program that ensures that you're getting the right content, the right quality, that it all ties together, and of course that it's searchable.
Yeah. So just in conclusion here, let's talk about the product. So if you're going to know what happened in my project, after spending thousands of dollars on my own, returning products, returning fans, I ended up just hiring an interior designer that I wrote a check to, and then she furnished most of my house and did most of my work. She was pretty incredible. But you were telling me, you started to tell a little bit of story about your shower.
Right.
That I thought was fascinating.
You took the DIY, you took it up to the pro, right?
Well, so, I paid for it, and then I paid for it again.
There you go. Yeah. So with our, not as big as, outfitting the whole house, but did have the shower project. Two showers were getting really hard to turn, basically identified it was the valve inside them. And actually went to the manufacturer website, and lo and behold, there was a very detailed installation video for the shower valves. And after watching this video, I said, I can do this. I went to Lowe's, I bought a valve, I put it in, it wasn't in quite right. Took it back apart again, put it in the right way, felt good about that. Bought the second one from Amazon, saved a couple of dollars on that, and now both of them are in place. Likewise, I can actually, relate to your story though, I did the same thing with my lawnmower. I've got a large yard with this big mower with 2 blades on it, and the timing belt was messed up. But I thought, oh, I could see the timing belt. I'm like, oh, I can do this, right? I can do this. Again, went and started watching the installation video. After about 5 minutes, the gentleman had disassembled everything. I mean, this lawnmower was down to the parts just everywhere. Stopped it. Said, nope, this is not a job for the amateur. And wound up taking it again, leveled up to the pros, people who know how to do this, and took it to the shop. But in that case, it's probably a good thing that I didn't take that project on, because I don't think that would have gone well. My lawn would probably be, this tall because no mower.
Well, what did you do? What did you do with the instructions? I'll tell you what I normally do with them.
Oh, for the
what did you do with
the shower? The instructions were just thrown away. Just thrown away. Yeah. Right. Opened it up, looked at that, and said, "Oh, this is how things used to be done." Took a lesson from my kids. Actually, after I watched them, they went straight to YouTube anytime they wanted to do something. Even learning a new board game. Learning a new board game, straight to YouTube, right? So yeah, threw the instructions out. I found that great video from the manufacturer. And there's a lot of handymen and handy women out there who do their own how-to videos. In this case, I could put a lot of reliance on it because the manufacturer had produced it. Good, high quality. And I knew I was getting the right information coming from the manufacturer. So that was what spurred me to take on the project. And overall, it went all right.
I also throw away my instructions, but I do it for a different reason. Once I'm halfway through a project and it's apparent that it's going to be a mess, I throw the instructions away so that when my wife walks in and says, "What the heck's going on?"
Yeah, no
I just say, "I've got no instructions.
Yeah.
I've got."
They forgot to put the instructions.
I'm doing my best. So listen, at the end of the day, this is about the digital shelf is incredibly important to home improvement and DIY. Create a product content program, make it better every day. And we really appreciate you attending. We're going to look at some questions now. If you have questions, there's a Q&A panel box inside of Zoom that you can ask questions in there.
Thanks a lot, guys. So the first question that we have from the audience is, what are your thoughts on mobile apps and how they should be integrated into your digital shelf strategy?
Mobile apps. So the question, make sure everybody here, is what do you think about mobile apps and how it should be integrated in? I think there's a bunch of mobile apps right now. Like there's Proposal Builder right now for the pro market. That Proposal Builder is an app that many B2B companies use to actually build their like quotes out of, and they need product content to serve. So that's an easy one to integrate with. But the other apps, I mean, the social apps, things like TikTok and things like Instagram. I know it kind of sounds silly to be involved in TikTok, but you have a tremendous, there's 1 billion monthly active users on TikTok now. And I would incorporate them into your digital strategy. I think as far as integration goes, I would focus more on the apps like for interior designers and the architectural apps that might be used.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. So specific on the B2B front, the fact that you've got an app gives you access to some critical information. So plumbers, electricians, they're on the go, right? They're on the go. They're trying to get to the next job. And I know for a fact, a large distributor actually in the Boston area where we're at right now did a phenomenal job with their mobile app. And it included real-time inventory to the warehouse, including all the different distribution locations they had all over the Northeast. So you could, within your app, and I actually saw this in action, you could actually have the app, and because it was pinging the ERP system so fast that you could actually see how many parts were available right now. And the numbers were changing in real time. That's really hard to do. But it gave the contractor confidence that I need that part. Okay, my mobile app triangulates my position. What's the closest location? Do they have it? No. What's the next closest location? Okay, they have 3. Lock one up right now. Now I know I can drive over there, grab it, and I'm on my way to my job.
Inventory by branch.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it was really powerful.
So related to that, there was also a question around voice search and if that's something that we should be considering for the digital shelf.
Voice search is interesting for me. I would prioritize image search above voice search myself for the moment. I have a skewed vision because I just don't use voice search as much as other people do. I did see a statistic just the other day though, that over the last year, voice search was up like, I think 84% over the last year from smaller numbers, but still 84% is pretty significant.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, voice search still accesses product data.
Yeah.
Though, right?
Yeah.
It just has to be structured a little bit different to make sure it can find it based off of the voice commands. Because I think people do speak things differently than they type things.
So I think the
right?
use cases can be different as well. So I'm a complete nerd. So I have a Google Hub and I have an Alexa sitting there because I just wanted to play with it as a user and see, how it would interact with it. I think in a lot of cases, voice search is good for real quick type questions where you know specifically what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue in the DIY space that it is much more difficult based on what you said is you need more data, you need more detailed information, you need more, how to and things like that. And I don't find voice search to be particularly useful for digging and drilling. I find it really good for very quick snippets, very quick answers to questions. But I have never used it personally in any DIY kind of scenario because I'm in like much more of an aggressive research mode and I'm looking for a lot more product data, the words and the diagrams, video, like all those pieces of rich content and not just the Alexa giving me a quick couple sentences back on a voice search.
But in B2B, I mean, you know exactly what you will look, right? I'm looking for this part number, this spec. I can see the growth there.
I could see it possibly in the pro market. Yeah.
I mean, I like when we deal with like grocery and food and beverage, voice search is climbing tremendously in that area, quicker than it is in the home improvement area.
Right.
Got another question related to any types of tools that either of you would recommend in order to actually improve the product detail page content.
So the question is, are there any tools to be able to analyze the product content?
And then just improve the product detail page content too.
Any tools available to improve the product page content?
So I would say, in our side, and again, you got to be careful when you set this up that you don't jeopardize SEO. But I'm a big fan of on the PDP, on the product detail page, having some tabs so that you don't have to bounce all over the place. So you have a tab for the main dims and specs of the product. And then you have a tab which has instructional videos. And then you have a tab which gives you access to, diagrams or those, and kind of lay that in a tabular form. Some e-commerce systems do that out of the box. Other ones you need to do some customization to get that into your product detail page. But it does keep your firm sort of bouncing out to lots of different pages. It keeps it more concise. Just be sure that whoever done it, you've done it, your agency, whoever's doing this, does it in such a way that you don't lose the SEO juice behind those tabs. Those need to be configured in such a way that Google is searching all of it, not just what's on the main screen, but also searching into all of those tabs and surfacing that content.
I mean, at the end of the day, product content, needs a couple things, right? The first is it needs analytics, right? We have to know how our content is performing, right? We have to know how our content is performing in search. We have to know how our content is performing with click-through rates. And so you need analytics to be able to do that. And next, you need to be ability to publish and syndicate that content out, right? You need to be able to publish those to your retailers, to your marketplaces. And then lastly, you need to be able to govern and manage that product data. So, this is obviously a Salsify webinar, but Salsify is a great tool for being able to improve all those areas, PIM, activation and publishing, as well as analytics and insights.
And then, of course, controlling and governing that content data, right? Because as you start pushing product data out, if it takes on a life of its own, that is a whole other governance kind of a nightmare. So you need to be confident you've got the right tool that's helping you govern that product data as it goes out to various endpoints.
Absolutely.
So the last question we have is a two-part question, actually, and it's related to the B2B versus the B2C markets and that B2C DIY market. Do retailers have different data stores for B2B versus B2C?
So the question is, do do B2B retailers, or if you have a retailer that has both a B2B and a B2C division, do they have different data stores depending on if it's B2B and B2C? I'm going to say it's the answer is all the above. It's yes and no. Home Depot has a Home Depot Pro division. They now have HD Supply, as well as they have their HomeDepot.com areas. Lowe's has a similar, I don't know what Menards does. Grainger has a single repository for both B2B and B2C. So it depends on the retailer that you're talking to. I'll tell you this though. I mean, I can see lots of use cases for sending different B2B data in B2B use cases versus B2C data, right? Sending more data. So sometimes in a consumer situation, more data is actually harmful, right? Because you want to just have a couple things to make a decision based off of. In B2B, that amount of data is critical. It could be a safety or a legal issue to make sure.
Right.
So I do think it's both.
Yeah, looking at it from the technical lens, when I hear data store, I hear, I'm thinking SQL databases and data warehouses, that type of thing. So I would say right now, most companies probably do separate to a large degree. I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to do it. And again, it comes into how you're structuring, where your data is stored, and how you're managing that data and getting it out to the endpoints. There's a lot of overlap in products between B2B and B2C as far as the product itself, how you merchandise that. And what Justin just said, the amount and the type of content you're wrapping around that product for the B2C market versus the B2B market, that's very different. But that doesn't mean that that product needs to live in two separate locations, right? It can live in one location. It can live in a very good PIM, and then that product can be customized, this type of content for that channel, and then different content for that channel, and then all the other channels as well, right? The B2B to C stuff. So ultimately, the efficiency is you should work to have a single source of truth, so you don't have your product data replicating itself unnecessarily and propagating itself in multiple systems. Eventually, that's going to be a governance nightmare. If it's not already a governance nightmare, it will be.
We talk about having single source of truth for PIM, and then multiple sources of truth by channel, right? So you can send this data over here to the B2B side, to the pro side, and this data over here to the B2C side. You're still keeping that nicely, tightly governed while having that flexibility.
Exactly.
Tom, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. This will be recorded, and we'll make sure everybody has a copy of it. Feel free to reach out to Tom or myself. Both of us are very active on LinkedIn, as well as if you're a Salsify, you can reach me at jking@salsify.com. Why don't you give everybody your email?
The email is tom.williams@competitive.com.
tom.williams@competitive.com. Thank you so much.